Joining me now for an exclusive interview is Donald Trump's running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence. Governor Pence, good to see you again.
Thanks, Jake. Good to see you.
So let's start with this issue, the estimated 11 or so million undocumented immigrants currently in the United States. This is what Mr. Trump promised back in November. Take a listen.
You're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely, very
Are they
inexpensively.
going to be ripped out of their homes?
Can I tell you? They're going back where they came. If they came from a certain country, they're going to be brought back to that country. That's the way it's supposed to be.
So Mr. Trump has been saying that on day one, the violent undocumented immigrants will leave the country. But what about the rest? What happens to the other 11 or so million, however many there are? Will there be a deportation force removing these individuals from the United States?
Well, first off, let's be very clear. Nothing has changed about Donald Trump's position on dealing with illegal immigration. He put this issue at the center of this presidential campaign in the Republican primaries. And his position and his principles have been absolutely consistent. We're going to secure the border. We're going to build a wall, have a physical barrier. We're going to enforce the laws of this country, end sanctuary cities, implement E-Verify. And we will have a mechanism for dealing with people in this country that you heard the word humanely again. It's going to be fair, it's going to be tough, but there'll be no path to legalization, no path to citizenship unless people leave the country. He said that very consistently. The contrast with Hillary Clinton, who supports amnesty, open borders, who wants to implement executive amnesty again on day one, even though the Supreme Court of the United States rejected it, and Hillary Clinton, who wants to increase refugees from the terrorist-torn country of Syria by 550%. The choice could not be more clear for the American people. Donald Trump has been completely consistent in his positions, Jake.
Except on this issue, I understand everything you're saying there, but the one issue that you didn't really address is whether or not the 11 or 12 million undocumented immigrants will be removed by a deportation force, as you heard Mr. Trump saying in that clip from November of last year. Is that policy still operative?
Well, what you heard him describe there in his usual plain-spoken American way was a mechanism, not a policy. I mean, you're going to hear more detail in the next 2 weeks that lays out all the policies, but there will be no change in the principle here that Donald Trump wants to make it clear to the American people that while Hillary Clinton is committed to open borders and amnesty and executive amnesty and more of the same that has really harmed our economy and, frankly, as he said, with regard to dangerous individuals in this country, has cost American lives. You know, when I was in Iowa, I met with Sarah Root's family. The heartbreak of Sarah Root's story and other stories of families whose children have lost their lives to people who are in this country, dangerous individuals who are caught up in this broken system and then escape justice as the man that claimed her life did. But it's going to end under an administration of Donald Trump.
I get that the violent illegal immigrants will be removed from the country. But what I'm not hearing, and I'm wondering for people out there, and look, it's not just the liberal media, right? It's also conservatives. It's Rush Limbaugh. It's Governor Sarah Palin. It's other people who want Donald Trump to win who are saying, wow, it sounds like he's really backing away from this deportation force, removing 11 million. And you're not saying right now, Governor, you're not pledging that there will be a removal of all undocumented immigrants. You're not saying that.
No, what I'm saying, Jake, what I've said to you a minute ago, and I want to be very clear, there will be no path to legalization, no path to citizenship. People that want to gain legal status, you heard Donald Trump say again and again, will have to leave the country.
Right, but what about the millions in this country right now?
Well,
what happens to them?
I think Donald Trump will articulate what we do with the people who are here, but I promise you...
Well, he already has articulated.
Donald Trump is more concerned about the American people, American citizens, people who are here legally, people that are struggling in this economy. You got a family in Ohio, the dad is working 2 jobs and mom has a side job, and they're trying to make ends meet. They haven't seen their real personal income go up in 10 to 15 years, and this flood of illegal immigration has contributed mightily to depressing wages in this country and denying jobs and opportunities to Americans.
That's why I'm
Donald
asking.
Trump is going to focus. I know the media wants to focus on that one issue. Donald Trump will articulate a policy about how we deal with that population, but I promise you, he is going to remain completely focused on American citizens and people who are here legally and how we get this country
I don't understand
working
why
for people who play by the rules.
I don't understand why it's the fault of the media for focusing on an issue that you're
Well-
crediting Donald Trump for bringing to the fore.
Yeah.
The idea is Mr. Trump won the primaries in no small way because he had this very forceful position saying all 11 or 12 million undocumented immigrants will be forced to leave the country. Now, you right this minute are not saying that that's the policy.
Well,
You're saying he's going
yeah.
to be unveiling it in the next few weeks. It's 72 days until the election.
Well, the way you characterize his position is one thing. I think he's been completely...
we just ran the clip.
Look, Jake, he's been completely consistent in the principles that he's articulated. Nobody was talking about illegal immigration when Donald Trump entered this campaign. He was attacked from day one for putting the whole issue of the violence that is derived from certain individuals that come into this country illegally on the table. He's made it clear, we're going to secure our borders, we're going to build a wall, we're going to enforce the laws of this country, stand up and uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. But what you see going on right now, and I think at a certain level it's very refreshing, because it's the Donald Trump that I see every day, is you see a CEO at work. You see someone who is engaging the American people, listening to the American people. He's hearing from all sides. But I promise you, he is a decisive leader. He will stand on the principles that have underpinned his commitment to end illegal immigration in this country. And that's what people will learn more about in the days ahead. But let's be clear.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton supports open borders, amnesty, and even wants to increase Syrian refugees to this country by 550%. You couldn't have a more clear choice between Donald Trump and I, who will end illegal immigration in this country, and Hillary Clinton, who will pursue more of the same: executive amnesty, open borders, which the American people are sick and tired of.
To be clear,